right, today's lesson's over matrix multiplication. So yesterday we did scalar multiplication, which really was kind of one step. Now matrix multiplication is going to be more complex. Okay, so really pay attention to this. Okay, this isn't going to be super long because we only got 2 examples, but still, just kind of an understanding of how to do matrix multiplication. Not as simple as you think, as like yesterday addition and subtraction was. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead here. We're going to, sorry one second. We're going to fill in the blanks here, and then kind of, and then go from there. Okay. All right. So when multiplying matrices, you multiply element in a row from the first matrix by corresponding elements in a column of the second matrix. The sum, the sum of these products gives one element in the product matrix. This is called the the dot product. If A is a M by N matrix and B is a N by P matrix, then the product AB is a M times P matrix. Okay? And we'll explain all that right here. Okay? So, first things first is when I look at this first example here. All right, when I look at this first example here, I have to check the dimensions. Okay? Now, they do not have to be the exact same dimensions now when doing matrix multiplication. So pay attention here. All right. So this right here, what type of dimensions do I have? Remember, matrices or matrices are a matrix is written in the forms of row times columns. That's how you determine its dimension. Okay, we talked about it yesterday. So when you look at this matrix right here, I've got 1, 2, 3 rows, 2 columns. This is a 3 by 2. Okay. When I look at this second matrix here, this is a 2 by 2. 2 rows, 2 rows, 2 columns. Now, for you to be able to perform matrix multiplication, remember this is row times columns, rows times columns. For me to be able to perform matrix multiplication, the columns in the first matrices must be equal to the rows in the second matrix. So see how these are both 2's? Since they're both 2's, I can perform matrix multiplication. If they were not the same, then it would be no solution. Columns do not match rows. So now that we know we can perform it, what is my product going to be? Well, your product is going to be the rows, the number of rows from the first matrix times the number of columns from the second matrix. So in this case right here, my product solution or my solution matrix right here is going to be a 3 by 2. So what I do then is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a 3 by 2 matrix. Give yourself ample amount of space. So 3 rows, 2 columns. Again, I know to do this because of looking at my dimensions of the 2 matrices given to me before doing multiplication. Okay? Now what I like to do is remember my product solution is the rows in the first matrix times the columns in the second. So what I like to do is on the first matrix, I just label the rows. I say R1, R2, and R3. And then I directly go over here and say, okay, yeah, row 1, row 2, row 3. I then do the same to the second matrix, but remember, the second matrix, I'm only concerned with the columns. I only care about the columns. So I look at column, I label this column 1, C1, column that, C2. So then I go over here and I say C1, C2. So my first element here is just going to be taking row 1 times column 1. Okay, so let's look at it, how that looks like. Okay, so row 1 times column 1. So see how 2 is the first element in row 1 and 3 is the first element in column 1? I'm going to multiply those together. So I'm going to have 2 times 3 plus 2 times 3 plus, now the 1 is the second element in row 1, the negative 1 is the second element in column 1. So just go in order here, plus 1 times the negative 1. So first element in row 1 times first element in column 1, second element in row 1 times second element in column 1. So that's my first entry here. So now I go to row 1, column 2. So now I'm looking at all the entries from row 1, all the elements from row 1 times all the elements in column 2 of the second matrix. So same thing again, row 1, 2, first entry, times the first entry in column 2, a negative 2. So we're going to have 2 times a negative 2 plus second element in row 1 times second element in column 2. So 1 times 5. All right, this next element here is going to be row 2 times column 1. Row 2 times column 1. Okay? So now I'm looking at all the entries in row 2 right here, this negative 3 and this 4, and then column 1. So the first element in row 2 is negative 3 times the first element in column 1, which is a 3. So we're going to do negative 3 times 3 plus, okay, second element in row 2 times second element in column 1. So 4 times a negative 1. So that was row 2 times column 1. Now we're going row 2 times column 2. Okay, so we're going negative 3, first element in row 2 times first element in column 2. So negative 3 times a negative 2 plus second element in row 2, which is 4, times the second element in column 2, which is 5, plus 4 times 5. Okay, last but not least, now we're doing row 3, column 1. Okay, so row 3, column 1. So row 3, the first entry in row 3 is a 5. The first entry in column 1 is a 3. So we're going to do 5 times 3 plus second element in row 3 times the second element in column 1. So negative 2. I don't know why I did that in parentheses, sorry. Plus a negative 2 times a negative 1. Okay, last element here. Now we're just doing row 3 times column 2. So the first element in row 3, 5, times the first element in column 2. So 5 times a negative 2. So first element in row 3 times first element in column 2. Then second element in row 3 times second element in column 2. Okay, so negative 2 plus negative 2 times 5. Now that you've done that, that's the hard part. Now we just go ahead and simplify and we have our solution. So 6 minus 1 is 5. Negative 2 negative 4 plus 5 is a positive 1. Negative 9 minus 4 is negative 13. 6 plus 20, 26. 15 plus 2, 17. And then negative 10 minus 10, negative 20. And there you go. There is your solution. So yeah, that is a little confusing, but again, we're going to be spending 2 days on this, practicing this, okay? All right, let's look at this last example. So again, we need to look at our dimensions here. So we have a 2 by 2, and we have a 3 by 2. And it wants us to find x, y. So when I see this, I say to myself, okay, remember, this is in the rows. This is in the form of row times columns, rows times columns. Remember, the columns in the first must match the rows in the second. So what do you notice there? They don't match. The column, you have 2 columns in the second. You have 3 rows. You have 2 columns in the first matrix. You have 3 rows in the second. So since they are not the same, this is no solution. No solution because columns from first matrix do not match rows from the second matrix. Okay, you need to make sure you understand why that it does not work. Why that it does not work. Okay, and so you have one example of, yes, here's me doing multiplication, and then example of it not working. Okay, so I know that might be a little confusing. Again, we're spending 2 days on it. That is it for our notes today, and I will see you guys, talk to you guys in class tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day.